Last session, the clock ran out on a bill to allow campus carry in Georgia, but its supporters are back to try again. We'll talk with two legislators who say if you're 21 and have a license, you should be allowed to take your gun to school. Welcome to another edition of Lawmakers. I'm Bill Nygut. We're now 18 days into the 2016 session, getting really close to the halfway mark and closer to crossover day, which is now scheduled to fall on Leap Day, Monday, February 29th. So let's get right to our discussion tonight. For that, I'm joined by Jim Galloway. He's the longtime political writer at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Representative Mandy Ballinger, a Republican from Canton. Senator Steve Henson, he's the Democratic leader in the Senate from Tucker, and Representative Rick Jaspers, a Republican from Jasper.
Absolutely.
Thank you all so much for being here. We want to start, Jim Galloway, I'm going to turn to you first. Representative Jasper and Mandy Ballinger, they're really pushing hard on campus carry. What does this measure call for, and how's it being received down there?
All right, now I'm going to stand ready to be corrected here, but it calls for if you carry concealed, if you have a license to carry concealed, you can carry in almost any campus area, any campus building, except for fraternities, sororities, dormitory units, and athletic events.
And Howard, what's the climate feel like to you down there for this?
I think it's, you know, this is a fight we've had since 2007, if I'm not mistaken, and so it changes from year to year. I'm sensing with San Bernardino and a couple of other incidents happening, I'm sensing more pressure in behalf of this. I mean, you've got House Speaker David Ralston backing this, I think, for the first time.
Representative Jaspers, I want to give the journalist a chance to frame the measure. He said it pretty correctly, didn't he?
He did say it very correctly. And I think it's one of those bills that when we put it in, it's restoring people's rights. And especially the thing we want to make sure people understand is folks who are over 21, who've been vetted by our court system to have a weapon. You know, and they do it now throughout the state. You know, we did House Bill 60 a few years ago. You know, we called it the Safe Protection Act. It got hung around it was the Guns Everywhere bill. And there was all this cry that all these terrible things were going to happen. And they didn't. Because the people who have these licenses are good Georgians. They've been examined by their peers, you know, probate judge. They take the responsibility of carrying a weapon very seriously. And that's where this is all around. And that's why you see this very, very low incidence of crime committed by people who have a license. It's almost nothing.
Last year, the Regents, the Board of Regents, really fought against this legislation hard, and whether it was their pressure or other circumstances, the bill failed in the 11th hour. It was pulled out of the so-called Guns Everywhere bill. Are you getting the same kind of pressure from the Regents this year that you got last year? Are they still determined to try to bat this thing down?
I think Representative Jasper, since he was on the conference committee, because it passed the House.
Right.
I think that's really important.
Right.
And you know, it failed in the conference, but yeah, of course they are. They've got their reasons why they don't want to do it. But I think you've got to look at just the strict facts of, just like we said, when Jim said of what's happened recently at Georgia State in a secure building. At the library, we've had 4 robberies. And they're not just snitching people's computers either. And you know, we look at just the statistics that the universities and colleges create themselves has shown that those aggravated assaults, you know, violent crime is way up. But violent crime generally in our world that we live in here in Georgia is down. And it goes right back to just the simple thing that people hate to admit, that criminals love gun-free zones.
Senator, Democrat. Go ahead, Jim.
If I can, just one point that's been made is, well, first of all, how would this work? Because you can't put a gun in a dormitory or a fraternity or sorority. So I understand how commuting students would be able to keep them in their automobiles. But otherwise, what kind of costs are associated? We had Keisha Waits on here, I think, last week, talking about the universities and colleges would need to set up gun safes. Is that true? And how much money would that cost?
Why would they?
Well, if I'm...
That's the answer, is why. There's no reason for that. Currently, today, an individual in Georgia, if they chose to, could break the law, could carry them anywhere. But when we look at what we're saying, yeah, there are going to be places they can't go. But when you look at the gun-free zone, it's a...
Oh, I understand, but I'm talking about storage.
If you can't take it back to your dormitory, Jim is suggesting, same question I've had. Where do you put it?
Well, I think the majority of students that are over 21 that do have a weapons carry permit, those are the people that are mostly living off campus.
They're in apartments.
And they're in apartments, and they're in private residences or whatever. And they're, you know, I think they have the right to defend themselves.
And the simple fact is they wouldn't be able to carry them those places. It's as simple as that.
Senator, Democrats aren't very excited about this legislation.
Well, I mean, you know, as we heard from the Board of Regents, there's a lot of concerns about safety on campus. I mean, most campuses do have police, and, you know, it's just, you know, it's not necessarily a partisan issue, but it's one where I personally have concerns about the safety, and listen to those people running the Board of Regents and tend to think that it's probably not a great idea. We talk about carry permits on campus. I've got a Bill 73, Senate Bill 73, that says that you can ask to see somebody's carry permit. But right now, if a student had a gun on campus, law enforcement can't even ask to see their carry permit. So how do you know they really have a carry permit? And I think it could, I mean, it could cause problems, everything from accidental discharges to students getting into a fight, or maybe even some of the teachers not liking students having guns in their classroom.
But you look across the United States, there are states that have this. Those things don't happen. There's long-term states like Utah. They've had this. That doesn't happen. I think you got to go back to looking at who you're talking about. 21-year-old people. Courts have looked at them. They're having a dangerous weapon in their hands. They are going to be responsible. They have to be. But there's no reason, I think, Representative Ballinger, when we first talked about it, is to create a world where you're making people victims. That's wrong.
I think instead of guns everywhere, gun-free zones basically create victims everywhere.
Well, you know, you have a lot of states, too, that have requirements that before you have a carry permit, you have some training. Georgia's one of the few states that has no training at all. Even South Carolina and Tennessee have some basic training for a carry permit.
And Keisha Waits has introduced legislation that would require gun safety training for students carrying guns. Are you opposed to that kind of legislation?
Very much. I don't think you should have to take a class to be able to exercise your constitutional rights. Nobody has to have a journalism degree to exercise free speech.
Okay. Jim Galloway, I want to, the AJC this weekend had a really interesting article about the laws, the statutes that legislators pass that they exempt themselves from.
Of course.
And it was a fascinating piece. And one of the things, of course, that was mentioned is the Guns Everywhere bill exempted the state capitol. People cannot bring guns into the state capitol.
Say it correctly.
Okay.
The Guns Everywhere, well, you know, we carry the Safe Protection Act, said that if you have a government building and you offer full-time security, that's checking everyone coming in the building, on any government building, you've created a gun-free zone within it, and you're responsible for the care of the people in there. So yes, at the Capitol, it is total security, just like it is in most all courthouses in the state of Georgia and many other government buildings. So we didn't really parse out saying, oh, well, just the Capitol, but there are lots of government buildings where this happens.
But let it be said that the Capitol has the access to the funds to set up those guard posts and to give AR-15s to Capitol security people.
And there are many of us who would say it's fine. I'm with that.
So,
but
let me throw out, I know we're getting into a really philosophical question, but this occurred to me this weekend, and I'd love to hear you all comment on it. Senator Henson, I think I'm correct in saying that we've made this fundamental shift in how we view taking care of ourselves and each other. It used to be that Americans, Georgians, looked to law enforcement to protect us from the bad guys out there. And what legislation like this guns bill says is, no, it's really up to us as individuals to protect ourselves. We've shifted from our more traditional thinking about who is responsible for our safety. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well, you know, it's definitely the ball's moved on gun ownership and safety. I mean, I remember 20 years ago, there were a lot of people pushing back on whether the Second Amendment meant an organized militia or the right to carry, a constitutional right for everybody to have a gun unregulated or with very little regulation. but certainly I still look toward law enforcement to be the most important protectors we have on the streets and in our community. But there is a lot of dialogue about self-protection, and of course, we see cases where somebody's home's broken into. There was a case not too long ago in Georgia, and they were able to protect themselves. But we also see a lot of cases where gun violence is very common in America, very common in Georgia, and for one reason is prolific nature of guns in our community.
Mr. Jaspers, if either one of you could answer this, would universities and college campuses enjoy any protection if things go awry? I mean, I'm thinking, I have talked to campus security people, and what they're worried about is rushing into a live shooter situation and shooting down somebody with a gun in their hand who's trying to be a hero, and of course, that's dangerous. Is there protection in your bill for universities and college campuses?
There's not, and that was brought up today to me also, and it's something, that's the beauty of the legislature, is that when things brought up, then we can debate them, add them, subtract a bill as it moves through the process. And we've talked about that. I've talked about that with the Highway Patrol and how they attack a active shooter situation, and it's serious business.
Am I hearing that there could be consideration for adjusting this bill somehow to indemnify in some? What do you do about this?
Once you put a bill in committee, it's not yours. And committee chairman and those people who are in the committees can have their way with you and your bill, and without a whole lot of your input or desires. So we'll see.
Is this you gonna get this through this year?
I hope so.
Are they going to be able to pass this, do you think? What's your sense?
I don't know. I mean, last year it was intentionally caught up at the last minute, but it made it through both chambers. Of course, the representative started early and has been working on it. So, it's going to be one of those things that I think the last couple of days we're going to be looking at, has a good chance to pass, but still has concerns out there, and with the Board of Regents having concerns.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to watch this unfold.